Let's work some more problems. Let me adjust my camera first. So we're going to work two problems where we're given information about a equation. We're told the amplitude is 9, the period's 8 pi, the phase shift is 1/3. And then they want us, for this information, figure out the equation for that trig graph. Now, one thing that's important for this kind of problem, they have to tell us whether they want the equation as a sine or a cosine, because it can actually be either one. I could take this same information and come up with an equation that is based upon the cosine. So they have to, from the start, tell you whether they want the equation to be a sine or a cosine equation. So this one's a sine. So I've already written here the standard equation for a sine graph. So what I need to determine is A, which you know is the amplitude. You need to figure out what omega equals and figure out what phi equals. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this problem instead of giving out the little formulas again, because I've done it many times now. Just going to go work through it, and hopefully you'll pick it up pretty easily. This A is the amplitude. That's always the easiest one. Amplitude is 9. So basically, I can go ahead and put the 9 in here and the sine. So now, if I can figure out omega and phi, then I'll have the equation. Omega is something we can determine if we know the period, because the period, which we represent as capital T, is 2 pi over omega. If we know the period's 8 pi, then 8 pi, I can now, I wrote this again, it didn't need to. That's just a little confusing. So since the period's 8 pi, I have 2 pi over omega equals 8 pi. If I solve for this omega, I have to be able to do a little bit of algebra and trig. If we get omega by itself over here, it's 2 pi over 8 pi. The pi's cancel. So now I know that omega is 1/4. And finally, if I can figure out phi, then we'll be done. Remember the little formula for phi. Phi involves the phase shift. The phase shift is actually phi over omega. They gave me the phase shift of 1/3. We just figured out what omega is, so because of that, then we can solve for phi. So the phase shift is 1/3. We don't know phi, but we know omega is 1/4. So if I want to solve for phi, I'll multiply both sides by 1/4. And you get phi equals 1/12. So I put it in up here. And there's the equation of the trig graph with these characteristics. All right, hopefully not too difficult. Let's just do one more. This one that tells amplitude's 5, your period's 8 pi. and the phase shift is negative 1/6. You know what, just for fun, I think the last problem, the period was 8 pi. Let's just make it more interesting. How about, I'll just change it on the fly to 4 pi. Amplitude's always the easy one. It's 5. Now once again, this is gotta be a sine equation. So I can always find omega if I know the period, because it's 2 pi over omega. Here the period is 4 pi. If I solve for omega, omega is up equaling 2 pi over 4 pi, which is 2 over 4, which is 1/2. So now I can say 1/2 x. Now if I figure out phi, I will have my equation. We can determine phi if we know the phase shift. Phase shift is negative 1/6, which is going to equal phi over omega. I already know omega. Omega is 1/2. So if we multiply both sides by 1/2, you should get phi equals negative 1/12. So if I subtract a negative 1/12, that's the same thing as adding all right, not too difficult.